welcome to Le Mans as the penultimate round of the Radical Esports Cup for Season 4 of 2025 is under the lights here at the longest circuit of them all, at least if you discount the Nordschleife, of course. It is one of those circuits that is revered around the world and, of course, has the famous 24-hour race as well. It's great to be back here once again. Myself and Leah Romans will take you through the action tonight. As I say, under the lights, and it isn't going to get any brighter, by the way. This race is starting in the evening time, and it's only just past 5 o'clock, but since it's the winter, it's already pretty dark out there. And that is not enough of a challenge, it seems, Ron. It's this circuit combined with it as well, a round, to be honest, I've been looking forward to for some time.
You know, as have I. I've had week number 11 of this season penciled in on my calendar for quite some time, just because, I mean, looking through the calendar, we have had some banger races up to this point. Getting the season up and rolling at Mosport, heading off to the Nordschleife, heading to Imola for the first time in a while, heading off to Belle Isle on the streets of Detroit for the first time in ever. Portimao, first time that's appeared on one of these Radical Esports Cup schedules in quite some time. We have had some amazing races throughout this season, but these final 3 weeks, I think, are the truest test of a driver's skill and patience. Watkins Glen was a pretty tough race 1 week ago. Le Mans, of course, here tonight. It is going to be a wild race for sure. And the game of drafting leapfrog hang down the Sarthe Straight, golly, that is going to be fun. And also Road Atlanta in 1 week's time to bring off the season to a close and ring in the month of December. That's going to be a pretty wild race as well. I'm looking forward to this round. I think this is going to be unique. I think would probably be the best word to describe it.
Yeah, definitely will be unique, no doubt about that. Andre Castro is currently our championship leader by some distance, 232 points now. His gap over Harvick Gullikson, with Andreas Friedrich very close in behind. Pitch Evening with a bit of a gap either side, with Heinz Braun rounding out the top 5. Bit of a gap down then to Sully Rettinen, who's 29 points in front of George Gonzaga. Another gap of nearly 100 back to Rafa Blanco. Same to Sebastian Lipp and Paki Caruso, who are quite close, bring up the rear of the top 10. In our RaceSpot TV standings, this is only including the races that we broadcast here at 2100 GMT time. Excuse me. Andre Castro is the leader and indeed could have an unassailable points lead by the end of tonight if Andreas Friedrich doesn't gain any points on him, and he is the only one who can get away from him. Of course, remembering Friedrich did win last week. Harvick Gullikson slips too far away now, 21 points back with Peter Evening next, and then Heinz Braun fifth in the normal iRacing standings as well as ours. Sebastian Lipp and James Barry then next, 2 points in front of Sully Rettinen. Then it's Rafa Blanco and Christoph Lipp. Interestingly, how those standings do contain the same name, showing that you really do get the best here on the iRacing and RaceBot TV YouTube channels here when we broadcast this race on Friday nights. 18 degrees Celsius on the racetrack, as I say, at 5:30 now in the 29th of November, and in northern France that means it's already dark. Not pitch black, you'd say, Ron, but what do you make of comments? I already see one in YouTube saying that maybe the nighttime takes something away from this round a little bit, because this was a highly anticipated round anyway, and is, in some people's eyes, been slightly dampened by its nighttime staging here.
Yeah, this is going to be an odd comparison, but considering it is Black Friday here in the States, I think it is somewhat fitting to say it's like going Black Friday shopping with blinkers over your eyes, so you can't really see anything outside of just directly in front of you. You have no peripheral vision. For us in the broadcast booth, we won't be able to see all the pandemonium that goes on in the back of the shot. We'll just be able to see a bunch of headlights scurrying around. I do think it would have been cool to see all of that going on in the day, and of course, running in the night. The track temperatures are going to be rather frigid as well. I mean, we saw in that graphic about 18 degrees Celsius for the track and ambient temperatures. That's around about the mid 60s Fahrenheit, which is about as low as it goes for iRacing. And considering these cars are usually pretty tough to try and build up that tire temperature in the first place, that will probably subtract from the racing somewhat. I still think it is cool to see some night races here with the Radical Esports Cup. I just wish that we did it at some other tracks that we've done in the past, like Sebring, for instance, that has played host to some night races before.
Yeah, and not forgetting that, was it last season, the Sebring, when it was, yeah, I think it was towards the end of last season, already, time flying. An unbelievable race we saw there last season in this series. So hopefully we do see something similar here today. I kind of think we will, to be honest, because it is such a circuit where slipstream plays such a role. Could help us out. In terms of the field, by the way, we've got 19, I think, from what I'm counting at the moment, in the session. Indeed we have, so a couple of names we're not used to, but most of the big names here, Rafa Blanco being one of them, over the line, 1.1 seconds behind. And we'll go right with Gullikson. There you go, 5th place on row 3 at the moment. But it seems Andre Castro is asserting his dominance over this field, really. Over half a second over Kjetil Larsen. And I guess that's just because it's such a long circuit. He effectively got double the time to just stretch out his margin over the rest of the field, because we already know what a strong driver he is.
Yeah, of course, Andre Castro, very quick racer. I think there's also a little bit more gumption for him as well, considering the somewhat disappointment that he felt leaving the Radical World Finals just a few days ago here on RaceSpot TV. Entered that race after breaking his way through in the qualifier event the week prior. Things just didn't go well for him in the race at all. Got involved in a couple of collisions. I think he ended up outside the top 10 of the pro racers competing in that event. So I think Andre Castro maybe wants to try and redeem himself somewhat in this event. Of course, a pole and maybe even another win would be a pretty darn good way to do that. It's been a little while, in fact, since we saw Andre Castro win one of these races. You have to go back to week 7 at Mid-Ohio to see the last time that Andre Castro actually visited victory lane here in these 2100 GMT races. So I think he's looking to try and cap off our race spot championship and also just end this season period on a high note.
Yeah, in the meantime, he has finished second in every round since then, so he's not been doing badly, but you're right, he hasn't won for quite a few weeks now. That's a month indeed that it will creep up to if he doesn't win tonight and go through the whole of November without a victory, which would be kind of unusual by his standards. But let's wait and see whether that becomes the case or not with this starting grid and then the race, of course. Andre Castro on the pole then, but just over half a second in front of Kjetil Larsen, I'd say. Gordon Haag returning to the series. 3rd place for him in qualifying here at Peach Eveny, with Rafa Blanco and Javier Gullikson then sharing row 3 as the first drivers over a second off of pole. George Gonzaga and Mena de Graffa next, and we're already 2 seconds off pole here. Samir Kadura and Simre Idem round out the top 10. Robin Dougherty and Cody Petter round off row 6. Then it's Lars-Erik Frydenlund ahead of Chris Wetz, who didn't set a time in qualifying, and neither did Ola Gullikson, Rodrigo Cabanero, Jasper van Grootfeest, Rodrigo de Francisco and Sean Nelson not setting times. So quite a few names this week at Sebron that we're not used to seeing in this series, and I do wonder what that says about what the top guys are feeling about this round, or indeed the state of the year that we're in, of course, nearly the end of 2025.
I know one cool thing about this track that I think is quite nice. These cars are obviously sports cars, and this track, when you think of it, you think of sports car racing. So, gonna bring in some more sports car aces that don't usually run in these cars. Really interested to see how they can do on a track they may be familiar with, very familiar with, in fact, with a car that they're maybe a bit hesitant on. Let's see how those sports car drivers that we don't usually see in this series perform here tonight.
It's going to be interesting with a slightly different field, and I think because of the slipstreaming opportunities, Andre Castro might not find it quite as easy as he just found that qualifying session by beating the whole field by half a second. I think some of those others, like Kjetil Larsen, who's on the other side of the grid there, will be challenging him fiercely throughout this race, especially that front 6 or 7 or 8 or so are really sort of regular names in this series. Just waiting for Jasper van Grootfeest to get onto the grid, and he does now, finally in 17th place. So we are ready to go. Not many laps tonight at Le Mans, just 6 on the clock as we get underway from the bottom. Oh no, and Larsen doesn't get off to oh sorry, it's not Larsen on the front row there, it's Peter Eveny who doesn't get off to a very good start at all, and Javier Gullikson clipped him as he went past there on the front straight. That was pretty close, and indeed there was contact. We'll see whether there's any damage on either of those two cars. In towards the first chicane for the first time. Super difficult to get through here cleanly, but they do, at least at the front of the field where Andre Castro leads.
Yeah, so clearly the opening moment drama is no stranger to Le Mans, no stranger to the series, obviously, and it strikes once again. Everybody heading their way off through the end of the purpose-built circuit. Now they head on to what still makes this track technically a street circuit, heading down the back straightaway. This is where that game of leapfrog really comes into effect. You see that 4/10 of a second gap between Castro and Larson? That's going to be gone by the time they head their way into the chicane.
Let's see this draft train then. At least the top 6 are involved, maybe more. And here comes Ketil Larsen. You've got to try and disrupt Castro as much as possible. And Gordon Haag wants to disrupt them all here. Goes through the middle, 3 wide, and tries to take the lead from Ketil Larsen, who held it so briefly. Castro breaks too late and he's off through the gravel. Oh, goodness me, the championship leader has got through the chicane and through the gravel, down to 5th, and he might have a slowdown for that too. The drafting games have begun, and now Rafa Blanco is pushing Larsen to glory. Gordon Haag on the other side goes nowhere. He's got no help, and George Gonzaga is going to have to decide what to do here as well. Goodness me, it's the draft train you could have expected, only more so perhaps. Look at the entire field making their way down to the second chicane.
Oh my goodness, that was awesome to see as they headed their way down into the second chicane on that Mulsanne straightaway. And look at that, that's Ketil Larsen up at the front. Rafa Blanco slotted right behind in P2. Blanco, a past champion of this Radical Esports Cup Series, won it back in Season 2 of 2025. So he's no stranger to doing well in these cars, although it has been a little while since he really impressed. Now look at Gordon Haag in that number 7 car. Don't usually see him up towards the top of the board here in these Radical races. Currently running in 3rd. Very good start for him. That's Peter Evany running wide as they head their way off through that turn. He's got maybe slip back in toes. He saw us out with Samir Kadora.
Yeah, and that could be a problem when you start to get a bit further down the field and you're still seeing side by side. And all of a sudden you can start to see the front guys get away because they do seem to be working a little bit better together now. Look at this, Blanco on Larsen, it's still not enough. And now he's going to go for the lead, is he a bit prematurely? As Gordon Haag goes round the outside. And Larsen will not lead the field to the end of the first lap, I don't think. Gonzaga down the inside of Larsen. He has made up places on this opening lap. Already 4 in the opening lap here, Gonzaga, and he might well have more before the end of it. Castro down the inside of Blanco as well, who's gone from pushing Larsen to the lead down to 5th in only a few moments.
Yeah, that's going to be the case all throughout this race. Every single one of these 6 laps, we're going to see drivers wash up ashore, and then they're going to get sucked back out into the ocean. We're going to be seeing that game of leapfrog all throughout this race, side by side, as they head their way into the Porsche curves. Between Ketil Larsen and Gordon Haag, they are still P1 and 2. Look at George Gonzaga in 3rd. Nice to see George running up towards the front. Actually, the top-class driver of those inert drivers. A little bit unusual, so to speak, to see George running higher than all of his other team cars. Driver has been racing in these cars longer than I've been commentating them, as we see contact a little bit farther behind with the number 14 of Rodrigo Cabero.
Yeah, Caballero off into the gravel, and I don't think was the only one to have trouble on the opening lap. Sindri Edem as well made the contact, so there you go. Completely misjudged that, and also off into the gravel through Indianapolis. I think Rodrigo Di Francisco may have had trouble as well, but I'm not entirely sure on that. Only deducing that because he is a little bit estranged off the back of the field at the moment, but that might not mean anything. The front group is, I would say, 11 cars strong at this moment, and Larsen leading them, I feel is about to get swallowed up quite quickly here.
Yeah, they're in that section of the racetrack where if you're holding on to the lead, you're going to be feeling good. If you're holding on to the lead coming out of Mulsanne, heading onto the back straightaway, though, you're going to feel like you're in danger, and understandably so. A gap of pretty much a second or maybe even more. I'd say probably 1.2 seconds is probably the limit of being in the draft or not. And considering how long these straightaways are, I mean, heck, these segments of the straightaways here on the backstretch, probably longer than some of the full-length straightaways that we've had on racetracks throughout this entire season. So you got a great drafting opportunity. Look at the move from Evany, and look at 3 wide racing up in the front between Haag, Castro, and Larsen.
Oh no! Larsen hit by Peter Evany, I think, and he's into the wall hard to the first chicane. Surely he can't continue from there. He's got no headlights anymore. Oh my goodness, he needs to stay with the others, otherwise he won't be able to see where he's going. Somebody else is also, Rafa Blanco is also slowing down dramatically here. massive trouble at the front of this race as now Castro pushes Gordon Haag. They know they've got the chance to break away from the rest of the field, and Gonzaga and Evany are not alive to the threat at the moment. They're seeing the top two get away at the front of the field, and they are not working together to close this gap.
Yeah, as much as these drivers may want to consider doing a little bit of pseudo teamwork just to try and extend the gap and drive off into the sunset, they're racers, and we got no team cars up at the front, so we're not going to be seeing that at all. So let's take a look at this moment. Gato Larsa got chewed up and spat at, started that straightaway in the lead, enters the chicane backwards, spinning with the front clip completely broken off of that race car. That's how quickly things can go right here.
I wonder how Blanco also got into trouble there, because it was Evany who actually made the contact there. But I wonder how Blanco was sent off the road. This is Gordon Haag, who's got a very similar livery, in the lead, being pushed by Castro. And the two behind have organised themselves a bit better now, but they're still not anywhere near in the slipstream, really. If they want to have a chance at winning this race, Gonzaga and Evany, they've got to work together, in my mind, to get near these two.
The real question is, will they? Will they decide to work together? I mean, you got two veterans of these SR10s. George Gonzaga, he's been racing in these cars for many, many moons. Peter Evany, he's been racing in these cars for quite some time as well. The both of them have had their fair share of good runs, fair share of success. They also know how these draft races go in these SR10s. You can't go anywhere but just punching the ever-living crap out of each other, which is sometimes what goes on with these races. And speaking of, that's Andre Castro punching his way up into the race lead over Gordon Haug.
Yeah, nicely done. This is what happened meantime to Blanco. So while we were... Oh, he caught the back of Gonzaga, and then, get slammed by somebody there. Absolutely smacked. And they, by the way, lost use of their headlights too. So whoever that was also, Cody Petter's in pit lane, but I'm not entirely sure again if that is related. Wow, a lot going on that chicane this time around. Castro taking the lead from Gordon Haag has seen the chance at getting away from the field. Now, it's a question really about whether he's actually going to be able to manage it here. As Haag pulls out the way, this is what happened to Blanco, by the way. Absolutely smacked by the 17 car, which is Cody Petter, who's had to come into pit lane. Haag gives up the place to Gonzaga, who clearly believes he's got a better chance at, but look at the gap now, 1.6, 1.7. The working together now that these three are going to have to do is going to have to be extraordinary if they're going to bring Castro back from here.
Yeah, I will say this, Yoon, and this is honest. I think what they got to do in terms of working together is probably form up their own little train and just drive off to a local airport, fill their cars up with rocket fuel, and try and go up to the front that way. That is as close to an insurmountable gap as you can get. I will say, though, with the long straightaways, it is very easy to close up that gap. But if the drivers going side by side like they are right now between Gordon Haag and Peter Evany are going to do that throughout this race, I don't think that's going to give these drivers many opportunities to jump up and catch Andre Castro. Looking good if you're the driver of the number one cars are side by side into the first chicane.
Well, it's going to let Castro away, and we might as well enjoy the battle for second place as if it's the one for the lead, because Castro is going to be gone, and maybe they realise that as well. Maybe they think, well, we're never going to catch him anyway. We might as well fight amongst ourselves here. Three drivers always more interesting than two in one of these, because they do exchange places a little bit more and a little bit differently. See where they're bump drafting this time round. It looks like it is. So Evany to the front of the group. I wonder whether Gonzaga didn't really approve of Evany making the move there, and has decided to now do some pushing. I mean, they can gain multiple tenths of a second on the straights here by doing this. I'm just not sure that gap is going to be reachable now.
Yeah, now that gap's starting to look more and more insurmountable as this race goes along, and we're getting close to the halfway mark too. So if you're Andre Castro, you pretty much just have to settle into a groove. Don't push that car too much, and you'll be golden at the end of this race, because the drivers behind just cannot get their act together. They're going side by side at every single opportunity, which is great from our perspective here in the broadcast booth. But if you're a driver involved in that pack trying to catch up to Andre Castro, you're just going to see that number one car get smaller and smaller and smaller until the point where it's completely gone. It's disappeared into the night nighttime haze, and you're just going to have to worry about a battle for the podium spots. I'll say, though, the top 10 that we have gotten in this race, only a few of them we usually see in these events, and even a further few are ones that we usually see up at the front. Frankly, I mean, looking through, Havard Gulix and Andre Castro are the only perennial race win contenders of all of the racers running inside the top 10. Nice to see a different batch of competitors racing this week.
Yeah, it is nice to see some different battles. That was Kadura, I think, in the background going, oh, and Gullickson's had trouble now. So and he's dropped back to the pit lane. So there's one of the familiar names who was from the top 10 and is no longer there. And Chris Wetz has no longer got any headlights anymore again. So he needs Kadura to show him the way. This is what happened. Kadura went firing down the inside. Oh, no, sorry, he was clipped there by Gullickson, who then himself got into the gravel, slid around, and then was hit by Chris Wetz. Gullickson's rear wing came off. He went back to the pit lane. Chris Wetz can no longer see where he's going.
Oh man, Rizal's talking about the perennial race win contender that is Havard Gulix, the past champion in this series. He was a vice champion of the Radical European Championship here in 2025. That was not the best moment as they headed their way all through Indianapolis. That's such a tough section, though, to nail down in these cars, because if there's one thing that a Radical SR10 absolutely hates doing, it is braking while turning. Definitely a little bit of gap between those cars when the contact was registered. Unfortunate for Samir Kadura. We'll say, though, just to give a little bit of reprieve to Havard Gulix in after that moment heading down to Indianapolis, not only is that braking zone super, super tough to nail down, I've gotten the opportunity to not only commentate racing with Samir Kadura, and also I've gotten the opportunity to go side by side and race with him in these SR10 official races as well. I will say, and this is honest, maybe it's just my connection being a little bit goofy, but his car has like hopped in the air, flown 5 feet above the ground. I have seen some very odd aerial acrobatics done with Samir Kadura, so maybe a little bit of internet connection problems could have led to that contact taking place.
It certainly seemed like it during the contact, as we saw from those replays there. With Gordon Haag, see what Gonzaga decides to do this time. Seems to be one of, and he's going to go for it this time. So the book drafting is over, the battling commences. Even he goes from the front to the back very quickly. Gordon Haag around the outside goes through to the front, so it's a complete turning on its head there as Haag goes to lead the group now ahead of Gonzaga, and then even Gonzaga doesn't even gain any places or lose any, stays exactly where he is. And these guys are going to continue to do this as well. Not actually losing any time to Castro, but they need to be gaining it at quite a rate, and that's not happening at the moment.
Yeah, I think at this point they've just given up on trying to catch up to Andre Castro. They're like, you know what, let's entertain ourselves with Sabas. I thought they were going to go 3 wide there for a second. They didn't, but I think they certainly thought of it. Peter Eveny right in tow, decide not to go on the hard shoulder on the road on the back straightaway to make it 3 wide, which I don't believe there's any penalties on iRacing if you do get an overtake done in there, although I haven't tested that out too much. There could very well be any sort of like slowdown as a result of all of that. But one thing that you do see in these official races that you don't see in the Americas and European Championships that we got the opportunity to cover here on RaceSpot TV throughout this year, you can do bump drafting in these races. Just be a little bit careful of those incident points.
Yes, and it's a little bit precarious as well, I would say, but these guys should be experienced enough with it. Yeah, unless there's been an update to Le Mans recently, I don't think there is any penalty for utilising the hard shoulder, as it were. This didn't used to be there for many years at Le Mans. When they did finally tarmac the sides of the circuit, there used to be grass the whole way down. I think as recently as about 12 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. But, carries no penalty, and you do see it used in the rearward. Oh, Castro! A rare error, or what? What else is going on here? Because he was very slow out of Indianapolis that time. I almost want to say he was giving everybody else a chance, but I don't believe that is actually the case at the moment. We've got a battle for the race lead going on again here, and it's because Andre Castro has made, it seems, a very rare error.
I wonder if there's a slowdown involved in all that, whether or not he picked up a slowdown as he headed his way maybe out of the other... Not sure if that was a moment heading out of Mulsanne or exactly what the deal was. Maybe he took too much of the inside curb heading into Indianapolis. that was bizarre, because I mean, I didn't see him like go off in the gravel or anything of the sorts. It looked like he just took a pause for the call, stopped by the side of the road. As much as Andre Castro is a nice guy, there is no racer in the world that is nice enough to just pull over and let your competition catch up when you're about 2 laps away from a surefire win. That had to have been a slowdown or some sort of extenuating circumstances surrounding that.
That was unusual. But it does almost feel like Castro's giving them a chance, doesn't it, by going to the back of the group and fighting with them again. I mean, we're not going to complain. It's going to create a very, very exciting final 2 laps here. As I mentioned earlier, not very many laps around here because the lap is so long. But a normal length race, though it is just 6 laps, a slightly unusual one as well, in a sense of this circuit doesn't really take these cars very often, but glad that we are doing so here because it's so far provided some good racing. Now, even he's giving himself a bit of a gap to accelerate into here. Big gap in front of him to Gordon Hagen. I think he's hoping that bit of a slipstream he's about to get here will prevent Gonzaga from getting past him, but it won't. He's already alongside, and now they're fighting for the minimal slipstream that there is. So if that was intentional, it's been a bit miscalculated. And now Castro's going to the right-hand side. He is going to use that hard shoulder on the right-hand side. We're 4 wide on the back straight so briefly, and it's probably a good job it was brief. Castro to the left-hand side of the road, who'll take the racing line again, and suddenly he's got the look of a driver who wants to win here all over again.
Oh, and look at how strong the draft is in these SR10s as we rode on board with Andre Castro. That was beautiful foresight from Ramiro on the production truck saying, you know what, this is going to be a spectacular view, and spectacular view it was. That car seemed like it had jet engines attached to the back of it, but it's not over yet. Here comes Gonzaga. He's going to try and get this move done. Look at Castro, though. He may drop out of the podium as look at Gordon Haug trying to follow in suit. He's deep on the brakes, so super deep.
Castro didn't want to give that up really, and not second place anyway. And so he dives deep on the brakes. Even he gets a much better exit here, and he gets alongside Gordon Haug, but then goes nowhere without any slipstream. Here comes Haug now in the slipstream with a 2 in front, and will Castro go for it here? Yes, he will. I do wonder what the tactics are at the moment, whether there are any, as Haug follows, and Gonzaga might well go right to the back of the group, something which he doesn't seem to mind too much.
My, oh my, what a race this has been. You know, I was wondering what sort of drama we'd be getting at Le Mans today, considering it's a race under the lights. Was thinking maybe grip was going to be a worry. These racers wouldn't apply the pressure too much. Maybe you should have Andre Castro pull over to the side of the road and stop for a couple of moments every week, because this is awesome.
Gordon Haug is going to get straight through here. There shouldn't be too much challenge on the way towards Indianapolis. Gonzaga and Evany as well, side by side into the corner, a bit deeper into the corner, but Gonzaga gets that one place. Castro gets close into Arnaud, and he's made a mistake! Castro follows him! The 2 of them are through Arnaud! Haug goes too late on the brakes, and Castro goes for a half spin, and both of them see their chances of winning go up in smoke.
Oh, they drove each other off the cliff there as they headed their way into an arc. That is the first time that I have seen either of those racers do that. That's the first time I think I've seen anybody do that in an SR10 race. One driver overshoots a braking marker. They both did it at the same time. That was nearly 4 cars wiping each other out, because in the midst of George Gonzaga trying to move away from those spinning cars, he nearly got spun by Peter Evany. Oh my God, if all 4 of those drivers took each other out and Samir Kadora was able to just blow their doors off and jump into the race lead, I would have eaten my shoe.
It's a pretty extraordinary race we're seeing at the moment. Just 1 lap to go at the end of this. And there's 2.5 seconds or so. Oh, mistake from Evany, but 2.5 seconds or so from Castro to and Haug to the front 2. I think it's got to be a head-to-head now, isn't it, between Evany and Gonzaga? I don't think either of those 2 behind are going to get involved, unless, of course, they fight really hard and invite them into the party. But I think it's a 2-horse race now. The question are all about tactics. Where do you want to be at what stage of the lap?
Yeah, I think if you're Peter Evany, I'm trying to think of how this would work. So he's probably going to lose out on the lead to George Gonzaga if they all run flat out, hang into the first chicane. He'll jump back in front into the second if he gets a move done there. And then he's going to get overtaken once again as he heads his way into Mulsanne. So I think if you're George Gonzaga, you're going to be smelling like a bed of roses right now because you've got the power. You are in that catbird seat with that gap closing. They started this straight away at 3/10. It is now halved.
Yeah, they're not worried about the two behind. They're all going to fight this one out. Gonzaga wants to go in front at this stage. He's happy with that. Even he goes over to follow him. And will he? The question I think now is he going to respond into the second chicane? If not, will it be to Mulsanne corner? If not, then will it be Indianapolis? And can you overtake on the way to the Porsche curves? I think he can personally, but so far neither of these two have sat in behind him and made a point of waiting for those final moments.
Yeah, so now whoever's in second throughout this race is going to be the one in the catbird seat. Look at George Gonzaga and Peter Evany weaving like a group of madmen as they head their way into the second chicane on this back straightaway. Andre Castro and Gordon Haug just swapped spots for third. If these two come to blows, that would be the battle for the race lead. And I mentioned that because the chances of that happening are not very low. That could very easily happen. It just happened to Castro and Haug not too long ago. It could very well happen to these two, but Evany, he's in the catbird seat. He has a spot to try and get the move done. Let's see if he goes for it.
I think he was weaving around to try and prevent himself from getting the slipstream last time, but he's realised that's actually quite costly. And now the gap's only 1.6 to those two behind. They're getting very, very close. And even he's going to be getting nervous in the middle of all this. Haug now through the Mulsanne corner just in front of Castro, who's got a decision to make himself now. Even he's going to go for it, is he? Is he getting alongside now finally? As Castro gets right into the back of Haug. No lifting now, just bump drafting hard on the way to the Indianapolis corner. They're side by side, those two. They're not helping one another. They're inviting Castro and Haug into the game.
Oh, and that all-star with George Gonzaga getting a terrible exit out of Mulsanne. And here comes Andre Castro and Gordon Haug side by side through Indianapolis, and through into third goes Castro. Oh, Gonzaga runs a little bit wide off into Indianapolis. That gap is only about 2.5 tenths between himself and Peter Evany. Now, however, Gonzaga does have a blessing in disguise. It's pretty much all turns from here to that checkered flag. Got to worry about the dirty air that's going to be on the nose of Peter Evany, Andre Castro, and Gordon Haug's race car. I think Gonzaga is the one that holds all the chips. He has all the cards in his hands. Let's see how he plays them.
Does he have enough of a gap into the Porsche curves? It looks like he does. Castro needed these two to be side by side at this stage, and they're not. That straight is normally long enough, but even his exit off of Arnage was just not good enough here. George Gonzaga has attended most, if not all, weeks of this 2100 GMT broadcasting split season, and he's not finished in the top 5 before. He's definitely going to do that. Is he going to finish on the top step of the podium? It looks like he will do. 0.4 of a second. The dirty air massive through those final chicanes as he comes into it here. Castro again having to pull off to the side and lets through Gordon Haug as he gets a slowdown penalty. Even he's putting on the pressure. It's going to be the run out the final corner if he's going to get it. It's going to be very close. Gonzaga's putting in lights. Oh, he nearly lost it there, but by 0.07 of a second, George Gonzaga takes it. Peter Evany flashes lights as well as an acknowledgement of Gonzaga's achievement. George Gonzaga takes it. He was in a strange line there through the final couple of chicanes and very nearly saw it slip through his fingers. But George Gonzaga wins at Le Mans for the first time this season. Oh, that was a fantastic win and a photo finish here at Le Mans. 0.07 of a second, his gap at the line.
Holy cow. You know, I thought it was Gonzaga's win for the taking as he headed his way into the Porsche curves with that gap. I didn't think Peter Evany was going to be able to give us a photo finish considering how short the run is heading out of the chicane to that line. If he had a couple of hundred more feet, he could have very well grabbed that W. What a race, though. That was absolutely thrilling.
Yeah, a fantastic race. There's the photo finish. In the end, you didn't especially need a camera, but it was quite close and closer than you'd expect. It's a very short run at the final corner, and it was a pretty short margin between the two of them as well. But it's George Gonzaga who takes the victory here. James Barry in YouTube chat has been speculating about whether he's ever won one of these before. We'll fact check that before we say it properly. George Gonzaga wins by 700 of a second before Peter Eveny just nearly getting him on the line. Gordon Haig there, third place. Nice finish from him ahead of Andre Castro, who definitely got a few slowdowns during that race and actually drops off the podium for only the second time since the Imola race at the end of September. Sami Khedira rounds out the top 5 with Robin Doherty then in the next group ahead of Sean Nelson. Lars Ferdinand, Ollie Gullikson and Menno de Graaf rounding off at bottom half of the top 10, who haven't been with us so often this season. Rodrigo Cabanero finishes 11th ahead of Jasper van Gruthes. It's Chris Retz, who had to get a new nose at some stage in that race, who finishes 13th ahead of Rodrigo de Francisco. Sundre Idem also needed a new nose, 15th place rather for him. Harry Gullikson needed a new rear wing and finishes 16th. Ahead of Ketil Larsen, who was sent into the wall at the first chicane. Rafa Blanco and Cody Petter ended up multiple laps down. Let's have a chat, shall we, to our race winner tonight from Le Mans, George Gonzaga. And George, welcome in. Congratulations on winning here at Le Mans tonight. I mean, so many twists and turns, but tell us about the final sector, first of all, and your emotions on the run to the line there. Is even you got, I mean, surprised me how close he got actually, but you were home pretty comfortably in the end. Tell us the emotions through that final sector for you.
I still cannot believe it. I'm like shaking all over the place. I really didn't think I was pulling that off. I don't know. I just thought not to battle too much. Sorry, I'm really out of breath. It was really intense. I don't usually do this, you know. So it's kind of I'm kind of yeah. But yeah, I was trying to not be too ambitious, just biding my time, trying to get some distance and stay on the draft. And then I saw Gordon and Andrea just spinning off. I knew it was just I was conformed with the second place, to be honest. Like, I thought I'm not even going to battle Peter. But then I saw the opportunity. I saw he was trying to be strategic with the straights. In my mind, I was trying to calculate what was the best straight to attack. He had the same thought, so he's trying to get away from the draft, but I wouldn't have it. I was trying to get in front of him so he would get closer. But yeah, and then I don't know what happened on the last sector. I'm not usually that fast on the Porsches, but I think in this case they weren't either. And then when I saw the gap on the last chicane, I just thought, don't ruin it, and yeah, and he was just crossing the line. Ugh.
I can hear that you're sort of elated with the win, and you know,
You have no idea.
Surprised. Perhaps surprised a little bit as well. I mean, was this one of the circuits you thought you could really have a good go at, or is it completely taking you off guard in that respect as well?
Completely off guard. I wasn't really expecting this. Like, you know me. I'm usually mid-pack. I'm not really a front driver. I do love Le Mans, but it's not necessarily that I'm really good at it. Actually, I didn't even put that much practice this week. But I don't know. It's just it was my lucky star. It was my lucky night, I guess. Yeah. I will put it down to luck. Definitely not skill. Not with Ivani and Andre next to me. Like, those guys are proper fast. So I guess I was just lucky.
Yeah, I think you can take some credit yourself as well. Congratulations on the win tonight, and thanks for coming to chat to us at the end of the race as well.
All right. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Thanks very much. That is George Gonzaga, who wins tonight by just 700ths of a second. And this is what happens, Ron, when we have mixed up fields. Some new names to the field, of course, although most of those, with the exception of Gordon Haig, weren't competing up the front of the field. It means you can get surprise winners, surprise results, and that's what the combination of Le Mans in the dark and indeed a slightly mixed up grid has given us tonight.
And what a race. That was fantastic. I mean, from the slightly shuffled field with some drivers that we don't usually see contending for wins, actually contending for victories, from that to the draftiness all throughout. I mean, that was probably the strongest draft race I've ever seen. And I've commentated many of these races at Spa, which is usually the draft track to end all draft tracks. That made the Nordschleife seem like we were racing at Belle Isle in terms of the draft. That was wild. I gotta say, I'm really looking forward to the season season finale at Road Atlanta next time out. That's another draft-heavy race. So some technicalities thrown in the midst that will keep these drivers on their toes. But I'm really hoping, I don't believe it will be on the schedule for season 1 of 2026, but maybe for season 2 of 2026 once we get into the spring of next year. I really want to see Le Mans return. I know it's a draft-heavy race. I don't want to see it every single season because those draft-heavy races can occasionally get a little bit monotonous, for lack of a better term, but I would love to see this track come back. That was just absolute must-see racing.
Yeah, it would be nice to see it back, but we will wait and see on that front, of course. Don't know the schedule, I don't think, yet for next season, although it is approaching quite quickly. Maybe we do.
That we do. I actually have it up right now, but...
go on. Any highlights particularly before we go? What's on the schedule?
I will quickly go over. We got Sebring to kick the season off. Alton Park for week number 2. I like Sebring, albeit I'm American, so I'm definitely biased. Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. That's going to be interesting. We're going to be running in Mexico City at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez for week number 4. That's going to be wild. Daytona. Have you covered a race at Daytona with these SR10s? Because that was one of the first SR10 races that I covered way back in season 2 of 2023. That's a wild combo.
Yeah, I have done. Although it was I think it was an hour race actually. It was in the league, so yeah, that was a little bit less of what you're talking about. But yeah, some unusual ones and some of the traditional ones. I must say, yeah, my disdain for Sebring continues because it is on the schedule for every season, and indeed it's on every schedule. So there you go. By the way, very excited about the final round of this championship, which is going to be next week, of course. 5th of December, same time, same place from Road Atlanta. That should be a good end to the year as far as season 4 of 2025 is concerned. Don't forget the first week of the 2026 iRacing season actually really takes place in 2025. So 5th of December, make sure you're back with us here on the iRacing YouTube channel for some more radical racing. Can't promise it's going to be like Le Mans, but it will be exciting, I am sure. Big thanks to everyone who's been tuned in tonight. It's been a lot of fun to bring you this broadcast once again on the RaceSpot TV and iRacing YouTube channels. I've been Ewan O'Leary alongside Ron Mounds with Ramiro Augustus Cisneros behind the cameras. We will see you again in 1 week's time for the final round of 2025 Radical Esports Cup action from Road Atlanta. Look forward to seeing you then. Goodbye for now.